That's awesome. So, I want to introduce you to a really good friend. This gentleman's actually been on the PGA Tour for 40 years, I found out the other day, right? And so, Larry Moody has been the chaplain on the PGA Tour and now on the Champions Tour. And Larry has just become a really great friend. And so, would you please give a nice Orange County welcome to Larry Moody?
Thank you. I happened to see the whole movie recently, and the Chinaman in the movie is worth $20 billion. I should never pay for a meal again, Derek. And by the way, he never lets me pay when I'm here in town, so he's such a good friend. So I am delighted to be back here with you. It's always a treat to come and be a part of the Lynx players and what they're doing here in Orange County. And you saw the movie. It comes out. I want to encourage you to see it. We actually did some filming upstairs, and the celebrity who wrote the book many years ago, Ken Blanchard, and the golfer Wally Armstrong, Ken Blanchard is here. Give a wave, Ken, up here in the front. I have known Ken a long time, including before he even wrote that book. So it's right after he wrote The 1 Minute Manager and about 2 others when I first met him. So it's really a treat. Well, you didn't come to hear me, so I'm going to introduce 3 of my friends. And they have so many accomplishments that I don't dare at 74 try to remember it. So first up, Tom Lehman. 12 Champions Tour victories, 2 Schwab Cups, 3 international victories, 5 PGA Tour victories, including the 1996 Open Championship, 4 Corn Ferry Tour. It was not the Cornhole Championship. It felt like it in those early days, didn't it? My friend Tom Lehman. 3 Ryder Cups, 3 President's Cups, captain of the Ryder Cup in 2006. Thank you, Tom. Appreciate it.
I love cornhole. I do.
He also did very well on that tour. He's the only guy that was the money winner on 3 tours, the Corn Ferry Tour, the PGA Tour, and the Champions Tour with 3. Player of the Year. Player of the Year in all 3. Next up, David Duval, 13 PGA career victories, including the Open in 2001. Ranked number 1 in the world. Shot a 59 in 1999 in the desert at the Bob Hope Desert Classic. Corn Ferry Tour victories there. 3 President's Cup, 2 Ryder Cups, 2 World Cups. Woo! I'll have to use my wife's phone to get the next guys. Bernhard Langer, 43 Champions Tour victories. 2 weeks ago at 64 years of age, 61 other tournaments, 4 father-son tournaments that he won, 10 Ryder Cups, Ryder Cup captain in 2004. Lots of money you won. Oh, and 6 Schwab Cups. Let's welcome these guys. All right, let's just go down the row, and you guys tell the folks about your family and where you live. Bernie?
Is this on?
No, you got to turn on. There it is.
I'm a little bit challenged with this stuff. Okay.
Not in golf.
I married a girl from Louisiana, been married now 38 years. We have 4 kids, 2 daughters, 2 sons. Now we have 3 grandkids and another one on the way, and it's a wonderful thing to be Opa. I highly recommend it. We live in Boca Raton, Florida. Been there for many, many years, and I hardly ever go back to Germany these days. So truly feel like an American. All our kids were raised over here, and very grateful for this country and the opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. David?
Susie and I, my wife is right over there, have been married 18 years on Sunday.
Wow.
We have 5 kids, 31, 28, 25, 16, and 14, and a 1.5-year-old grandson. Been in Denver for the entirety of our marriage, and Susie is born and raised there, one of the few natives any longer, and I'm from Florida, but we love the West and would never leave it.
That's great.
Well, I played in this alternate shot golf tournament. I had a blind date with this beautiful girl, and didn't know her. And I hit the first tee shot down the middle, and she gets up there. She looked great. Terrible golf swing and terrible golfer to boot, and hit the second shot into the weeds. I hit the third shot on the green about 15 feet from the hole. She hit the putt 20 feet by. And I made the 20-footer for a 5, and so I figured this is going to be a long day with a beautiful girl, and I was mumbling, and she said, "What's your problem?" I says, "Well, we got to do better than that if we want to compete in this tournament. We can't make, 5s on easy par 4s. She says, "Hey, it's not my fault. You took 3 shots, I only took 2. That's a joke. But I did meet this beautiful girl on a blind date, and we've been now married for 35 years, and again, 4 kids and 1 grandkid, and we're kind of at that stage now where we're talking about grandkids more than golf games, so it's pretty cool.
Tom, why don't we just go back down the road? Talk about how you got into golf, who taught you the game, and let's just start there. How did you get into it, and when did you think you wanted to be a pro?
Oh, wow. That covers a lot of time right there. I recall vividly in 2nd grade, I was born in Minnesota, and we ended up moving to Michigan. And my dad was an amazing athlete, and he took up golf later, than most, so he probably in his 20s at some point. And so, I don't know how old he was, but I was in 2nd grade, and I was a designated shagger of golf balls. And he had this big green army bag. It seemed like it was huge, but it's probably this big, but it was full of golf balls. And he'd go over to Central Michigan University, where we just lived about 2 blocks away from there, in Mount Pleasant, Michigan. And he'd say, "It's time to go practice." And I'd grab my baseball mitt, and we'd go out to the field, and he'd hit golf balls till it got dark, and he'd hit, and I would, catch fly balls and shag them for him. So that's how I got started with golf, and it eventually got to the point where I was sick and tired of it, and he wasn't going to let me out of it, so I let one hit me in the head, and that took care of that took care of the shagging. Moved on from there, and moved back to Minnesota in 5th grade, and I think like the rest of these guys will tell you, at some point you just realize you have a knack for the game, because you beat all the kids your own age, and most of the kids who are older in your area, and so then you move on to the next step, you move on to the next step, you move on to the next step, and before you know it, the only step left is the PGA Tour, and so that's really kind of the way it goes. Of course, Bernhard's a little bit different. I'm not sure, but he can tell his own story.
I grew up the son of a club pro. My dad's name is Bob Duval, Robert Duval. He probably, he did have the ability to play on the PGA Tour. What that would have looked like, it's always hard to say. But this is like late 60s, and he had gotten married and had a baby, and it wasn't certainly as lucrative back then, and so took a club job, and when he turned 50, it had set his sights on the Champions Tour, and he ended up qualifying. I'm actually he was a part of the Champions Tour for a lot of years until he got hurt. Actually won on the Champions Tour against all the people he would have been competing against on the PGA Tour. I'm actually kind of third generation. My dad's brother, my uncle Jimmy, he was a club pro, and their dad, Hap, was a club pro as well. It's funny, I think it was last week, right, Suze, that we ran into some friends. Susie met somebody on the golf course, and their grandfather as well was buddies, it turns out was buddies with my grandfather at Sanford Golf Club up in Schenectady, New York. So for me, getting into it was just more, I think, wondering kind of what Dad was doing during his day, you know, and had the ability to actually go to his office and see what he was doing. It was at a golf course, and I started hitting golf balls, I don't even know, at 4 or 5 probably, and just loved it. And certainly played the baseball, Little League, things like that, basketball growing up. But once I turned about 12 or 13, all the focus went into golf, and it was something you could do alone. You didn't have to count on other people, and lo and behold, it took me a lot of places.
Yeah. Bernie, how about you?
I grew up in a very small village of 800 people called Anhausen near Munich in Bavaria, Germany, and I'm the youngest of 3 siblings. And we were pretty poor at the time. So when I was about 9 and my older brother was 14, he started caddying, and every time he came home from the golf course, which was about 5 miles away, he would have a few Deutschmarks in his pocket. And I thought, man, that's cool to earn money, you know. So I begged him to take me along, and at first he said, no, you're too small, you're too little, you're only 9 years old. But we didn't carry the bags, we pushed trolleys, or, you know, I ended up pulling one and pushing one to make double money. But anyways, make a long story short, there was one golf course 5 miles away, a 9-hole golf course, private club, and I finally got to go, and I loved caddying, I loved earning money, and I earned about $1 for 9 holes, which was 2 Deutschmarks and 50 pfennigs. And so my connection to golf was really the love of money, more so.
So
More
not
so
much
than
has
the
changed.
game, but it didn't take very long till I fell in love with the game, and we were allowed to practice and play. Spent the summers, put up a tent. You know, I played 36 holes before the first member showed up, and just loved the game and got hooked on it.
Let's talk about mini tours, what you did to get to the regular tour. I know it was different from each one of you. Now, you have to realize all 3 of the people up here, and we've done these a number of years, but never have you had 3 pros up here that all were number 1 in the world sometime during their career. And it's a pretty amazing group of guys. So let's talk about your getting to the pros. Bernie?
Me? Yeah, I was, as I said, I was caddying, and at age 15 I finished school. 9 years of basic schooling, and I didn't really enjoy school, tell you the truth. I enjoyed being on the golf course much more. So I decided that I want to be a golf professional, a teaching pro. And so I knew about they were looking for an assistant pro at Munich Country Club, which was an hour and a half away. Which meant I would have to live there on my own, rent a small room at a farmhouse, and be away from my family. But before I did that, I thought it'd be a smart idea, or my parents thought, to go to the Institute of Job Placement in our town, which was Augsburg, a bigger city. So we went there. The gentleman across the desk said, well, young man, what do you want to do with your life? And I said, well, I'd love to become a golf professional. He goes, a what? I go, golf professional. He said, well, what is that? I said, well, it's like a tennis professional, teaches people how to play tennis, or anybody else. And he says, well, excuse me for a minute. It took him about 5 minutes. He came back, and says, well, I have to disappoint you, that's not a recognized profession in Germany. And this is now 1972, and here am I, not even 15, and my two parents, and the man across the desk said, well, maybe you should be thinking about learning something decent first, and then maybe pursuing this later. And my jaw fell, and I was so disappointed, and my parents, I could hear him whisper, well, maybe he should be learning something decent, some different, and he can always become a golf pro later. But I was so determined, and a member at our local club where I caddied, he knew about this job offer from Munich Country Club, so I drove with my parents, so they drove me there. And I met my future boss there, the head pro. They liked him a lot, and they finally gave in. So here I was, 15 years old, working away from home, being on my own, and spending 16 hours a day on the golf course, literally, as long, from morning till night, learning the trade of giving lessons, fixing golf clubs when they break, or putting new grips on, all sorts of things, running golf tournaments. And pro shop, my favorite job was the first hour in the morning. From 8 till 9, I had to be in the pro shop dusting. You imagine a 16-year-old boy dusting every day for an hour? That's a wonderful thing. Anyways, I became a decent player. Actually won my very first tournament in my life. I literally have to say that. There were 25 pros came to the Munich Country Club. I was now about 16 a year later, and there was about 25 of them. We played the 36-hole event, and I won it. Nobody even knew me at the time. And then I won, as a 17-year-old, the National German Close Championship in a playoff. A businessman from Cologne saw me and said, if you ever want to turn pro on the circuit, make a living playing tournament golf, let me know and I'll sponsor you. And I was all ears. I said, yeah, that'd be awesome, but I got another year to do as an apprentice. And make a long story short, when I was 18, I finished my diploma and went on the European tour, made enough money, and here we go. Now I'm 64. What's that, 46 years later, I'm still on tour. Who would have thought that? And the greatest thing was I never had a handicap. Never had to worry about that. Nobody ever gave me shots. I didn't have to give anybody else shots.
David, what did it take for you to get on the tour?
My path was, in some ways, so in junior golf, I was always kind of a bit of a late bloomer. Once I got comfortable locally, started winning every golf tournament virtually. Once I got comfortable playing nationally, started winning most all those tournaments, and it was kind of the same progression through college. It took me a little while in college to win my first golf tournament, but then I won a bunch of them. And then when I turned pro in '93, it was written in stone that I'm going to play and just jump on the PGA Tour and go out and go. And it didn't quite work out that way. I ended up playing back then, and I think it may be different now, but we were allowed up to 6 sponsors exemptions, and I played out those exemptions on the PGA Tour in '93. Had some success, but nothing enough to get onto tour or on a tour card. So then I started playing the Nike Tour, which is now the Korn Ferry. Played my first event in New Mexico. Finished, I think, somewhere from 11th to 14th. I don't remember exactly. I don't recall it being a top 10, but somewhere from 11 to 14. But at that time, and it may be the same thing now, I'm not sure. Top 25 got in the next week, and so I went to Wichita and played the next week on the what is now the Korn Ferry Tour and won that golf tournament. And then played out the rest of the year on the Korn Ferry. I think I ended up playing either 10 or 11 events total that year. And from what I understand, the Nike Tour Championship in Portland was supposed to be, typically the events then were $200,000 events. And it was supposed to be a $250,000 event. and at last minute it got changed back down to 200,000. Well, I won that one as well, and ended up finishing 11th on the money list. And at the time, the top 10 got their tour cards, not 25. Had it been a $250,000 event, I would have finished 10th on the money list. So I went back to I went to Q school in the fall. Had a little bit of a rough first few days. I was kind of outside the number, and but birdied 5 of the last 10 holes in the 4th round to seemingly get into the last 2 days, because those six rounds of qualifying. And remember distinctly watching the scoreboard and the number start just going like this, and all of a sudden it gets to whatever number I was on for 4 days, and then another score gets posted and goes up, and then it just drops, and it's like, oh, your heart sinks. And so I had to go play the Corn Ferry again the next year full time, and I was in a foul mood. I was really in a foul mood for till about June. And Larry knows my golf coach, Puggy from Georgia Tech, he's been a big influence in my life, and basically at some point I got to Cleveland, Ohio, and it had been 11 straight golf tournaments I had played, and I was just barbecued, absolutely barbecued, and basically was told, you need to get your head out of your ass, and you need to go home and take a break, and realize this is your path and what you need to do, and refresh. And I finally kind of woke up and realized, this anger, this resentment about not being where you think you're supposed to be is serving you no purpose. You have an opportunity to get to where you want to be, so take advantage of it. And I think I took a couple weeks off, skipped a few tournaments, and as you guys know, as you play in those events, you don't feel like you can ever miss anything. You got to play. And ended up finishing the top 10 on the money list and getting my card, and kind of got off to the races from there. Was successful my first year on tour. Didn't win my first year, didn't win my second year, won late in my third year, but then it just kind of took off from there.
Terrific, thank you.
Well, I guess I have a little bit in common with both you guys. I started out as a caddy, made a few U.S. dollars, not Deutschmarks, but put a few in my pocket. My first win on the Hogan Tour was in Wichita, same as yours. In Wichita, so it's the same as that. But my road to the tour was much like more like David's, I would say, and I mentioned before, is it takes a while to get comfortable, and once you get comfortable, then the engine really starts to go, and you start to win a lot, and then you move on to that next level. So you go junior golf, you go amateur golf, you go college golf, and then the next big step is to the PGA Tour. And once you get comfortable, which I still think to this day is the secret to good golf on any level, is once you get comfortable where you're at, if you're a good player, the sky is the limit. So it's all about having comfort and confidence in what you're doing. But it's hard to get there. So I know that I was very confident as a junior, very confident as an amateur, very, very confident as a college golfer. And I did get my tour card right away, but I had no confidence against the likes of, Johnny Miller and Tom Watson and, the greats who were still playing at that time. Jack was still playing some, and, Arnold had already kind of gone into his 50s, but, there was, Weisskopf was playing, and just, there's some really great players. And I thought, I don't belong with these guys. That was really the way I looked at it. So, my confidence sabotaged my ability, and I ended up losing my card and having to go on to the mini tours. And I played the mini tours for about, it's probably 7 or 8 years, and ended up getting my card, back to the tour through the Hogan Tour. When it first started, the Hogan Tour became the Nike Tour, became the whatever tour, and now the Corn Ferry Tour is this whole progression. But back in that day, you played the whole season, and there was only 5 cards, so you had to finish in the top 5 to get your PGA Tour card. And so I ended up finishing number 1. Which the significance is that everybody else who got their card fell into the category where you would get reshuffled. So on the PGA Tour, you have the Tour School, then you have the Hogan Tour, now Corn Ferry Tour, and every maybe 2 months you reshuffle all of those guys depending upon how much money you've made so far in the season. So to be number 1 was a big advantage because I never got reshuffled. I got to keep that first spot in every single week. And so I think so when you kind of go back and look, and you go back and look, because there's so many disappointments. I mean, there's so much frustration, and in the life of a golfer, your one opportunity every year up until that point when the Hogan Tour started was the tour school. You had one chance. You had 1 week, 6 rounds. And if you didn't do well, you had to wait another year to do it over again. All right, so that's the way you lived your life. You worked hard, and you traveled, you played. No matter where you had to go, you went, whether it be South Africa, Taiwan, Korea, India, any little town across the United States, South America, Canada, wherever you had to go, you went, which is what we all did back then. So you all worked forward until you got to that one big event at the end of the year, the tour school, where you could finally have your chance to get that golden ticket, that PGA Tour card. And like David, I had this experience, which relates directly to finishing number 1 on the Hogan Tour, of kind of getting to that point, where you kind of hit that magic shot at just the right time, at just the right place, and you realize, well, I do have what it takes. I can handle pressure. I do have the game that you need. I'm no longer afraid of the great players out there in the PGA Tour. I think I can compete. And so you go to the tour school and you feel like this is the time, this is my time to get through, and you finish the first round and you're 6 over, and you finish the next 9 holes the second day and you're 5 more over, so you're 11 over par after 27 holes, and thinking, okay, well, it's a 6-round tournament, a 4-round cut. That means you got to play more than likely the next 45 holes 11 under par just to make the cut. So I played the next 44 holes 10 under. So I came to the 72nd hole having to make a birdie, I knew, to make the 4-round cut. The 4-round cut, gives you a chance, for the PGA Tour, and it also gives you a chance possibly, if worst case scenario, the Hogan Tour. But anyway, on that 72nd hole, I hit this little buttercut 8-iron, which for me is just a straight push, but I like to call it I like to call it a cut. That's my cut. To a back right pin with water short, water right. Really a tough shot for me as a right to left player. I hit this absolutely perfect 150-yard 8-iron at just that perfect time. Never left the flag, ended up about a foot from the hole, tapped in for a birdie to make the cut. And so I'm thinking, okay, well, this is all meant to be. I mean, this is. I'm walking with God, and I am, feeling good about my life and my relationship with my wife and relationship with God. And this is, and I'm confident now, and go the next 2 rounds, play really well. I'm, 6 under par through the next 2 rounds, going to the 18th hole, and it's obvious that 7 under is going to be the cut. And so I need to make 1 more birdie. Okay, so, no problem. I'm playing great. Beautiful tee shot, at the Nicholas Resort course at PGA West. There's water left off the tee and water left on the second shot, so a beautiful tee shot right down the middle, 185, beautiful 5-iron, 15 feet just right of the hole. And the best part of all was my playing partner was about 5 feet outside of me, but on the exact same line. So you can't stand behind the guy, when he's putting, but as soon as that ball left the putter, I was behind him watching. And I watched that ball, and it went out right about 6 inches, and it broke, and then dove across the hole, and he missed it low, and like, okay, I got this. I've got the line. So literally this putt is to get the PGA Tour card. This is what you work for, and this gives you that ticket to the future. And I figure there's no way I'm going to miss this putt. And I aimed the thing just a fraction more high than he had, and I hit exactly the perfect line, exactly the perfect speed, and that thing got out there just a bit higher, and it started to break, and it started to dive, and it got near the hole, and it straightened out, hit the right lip, 360, sat on the edge, didn't go in. All right, so I missed by a shot. Okay, and so, I walked off that green, and that's the only time in my life I've ever cried because of something happened on a golf course. And, Melissa was by the side of the green, and I just kind of gave her a big hug and started bawling. I'd put so much effort into this, and I was so invested in it, and I was so expectant of a good result. And when that putt didn't go in, it absolutely just crushed me. It crushed me. I was devastated. And it took a while to get over, kind of like it took you a while to get over. But the good news is, I think, here's the whole purpose of the story, is that, God has this perfect plan. And this perfect plan is that I got to play this Hogan Tour now the following year and take this confidence that I had really kind of found and apply it to that Hogan Tour. And I absolutely dominated the Hogan Tour. I won 3 times, finished second 3 times, finished third 3 times, made $140,000, with $100,000 purses only. Made every cut the entire year. and then went into the PGA Tour as the #1 guy off the Hogan Tour. So I wouldn't have had that opportunity if that putt would have gone in. If that putt would have gone in, I would have been the last guy on the list to get his card. I would have been reshuffled back and forward and who knows where else. I never would have gotten the chance. And so when I look back, I see that his hand was this. It was, I know what I'm doing for you. What I'm doing for you is I'm going to give you the best possible chance you can to be successful. So this one more year in the Hogan Tour is what you need. That's where you need to be. That's where you got to go play. And that's really what got me to the PGA Tour.
Wow. That's great. All right, a couple of rapid fire questions. Favorite golf course, Tom?
Well, if I had one last day to play golf, one last day to live, I would hop on a A380 first class, fly to Glasgow, and drive up to St. Andrews, and I'd play the old course and hang out in St. Andrews all day and be a happy man.
Yay. David, favorite golf course?
I don't have a favorite golf course. We're blessed people to see the world's best golf courses in championship condition, but I would agree entirely with Tom. If it was one last round, it would have to be at the old course.
Huh. Okay. Bernie?
I'm going to go with Pebble Beach just for the beauty of the place.
Oh, you know what state you're in.
So I have a question. Who's played the old course? Okay, a lot of hands. Okay, so here's always my question. Is the 17th hole, okay, because it's one or the other, is it the worst golf hole ever created, or is it the best golf hole ever created? You can make an argument for both.
Where do you got to hit it on the sign off the tee?
Oh, goodness.
Hotel.
Well, okay, another one. If you had your ideal foursome, who would it be? I mean, and you can't pick me to go with you guys. Who would it be?
Who's going?
You go, Bernie.
Oh. Well, normally I say my kids. That would be the ideal foursome because I have 4 kids to be a fivesome. But who cares? But if you want me to pick, other people, I would probably go Ben Hogan because I've never met the person. Would have loved to play golf with him. Same with Byron Nelson. And I would throw Arnold Palmer in there. I played with him several times, and it was always fun.
Okay. How about you?
It would fall back to family straight away. And my wife plays a little bit, not a ton, but I have 3 boys, and so if it's a foursome, my 3 boys.
Okay. Thomas?
Well, I probably play 36 holes. I play the first round with my kids.
Okay.
Then I play the second round with, for sure with Byron Nelson. I think of all the men that I've met in the world of professional golf, Byron Nelson is the greatest as a person. There's many, many great people, so it's not like there's a bunch of other chumps. They're not. But Byron Nelson was something special. He was something special. A combination of very confident, capable, combined with super humble. The most humble. Like he walked into a Bible study one time, just to tell you the kind of guy Byron Nelson was. He came in late and he kind of snuck in the door. We were playing in Oklahoma. He snuck in the door and quietly just kind of sat down in the back seat of the back table that was one of the few seats left, and tried to kind of almost hide the fact that he was there. And at some point he raised his hand, just kind of like in school, and asked Larry, would it be okay if I said something? Here's one of the greats of all time. We're so honored that he's there, and he was so humble. He didn't want to bother us and asked permission to speak. To me, that's something special. And there's one other guy that I've met in my life who's like that, John Wooden. To me, they're cut from the same cloth, those two. Deep faith, supremely competitive, supremely humble, gracious, servant-oriented, just wonderful people. So I don't know who the third. I probably would put my dad in there because I just would, like him to enjoy that experience with me.
Great. All right. Funny experience on the tour, playing golf, something that This crowd would love to hear a funny story. Yeah, funny.
Well, I'll go first. Is that okay?
You bet.
Okay, so by the way, I have to. You said that your dad won on the Champions Tour. Didn't he win the same day that you won? You guys won on the same day, if I'm not mistaken. You won the PGA
Yes.
Tour. You won the Champions
I
Tour.
won the Players, and he won what was called, I believe, the Emerald Coast Classic at the time.
Is that not cool? Unbelievable. By the way, probably, I know you met Billy Graham. Billy Graham probably fits that mold too of
Yeah.
a. So anyway, he'd be a good guy to play with too. I mean,
Yeah.
You probably couldn't, have a beer and, I don't know. Okay, so what are we talking about? Funny stories? Funny stories. Okay, so we've all heard each other's stories, so I'm going to bore them with the same old one, but I think it's a funny story. The U.S. Open at Bethpage, and I don't know what the year was
That'd
exactly.
be 02 probably.
The first one?
Yeah, the first one 02, yeah.
Yeah, first one 02, that's it. So I think it's the fourth hole, the par 4, you tee up on top of a hill, and the fairway's down below, and it angles out that way, short left, long right, and just kind of goes way out that way, and then it turns left at the end, goes up a hill to the greens. It's a really hard hole, and this big bunker on the inside that was real long, and so you had to kind of bite off as much of the bunker as you wanted to, and the more you bit off, the shorter the second shot. And so, if you had the ability to just knock it over the whole thing, you could probably hit an 8-iron. If you went over the middle, you're probably hitting a 6-iron, and if you played real safe, you have to hit a hooking 4-iron over the tree to get to the green. So, I'm hitting it pretty well. I'm not as long as a lot of the guys, but I'm definitely long enough. So I took it over the whole thing. I just aimed over the very right edge of the bunker and just hit it as hard as I could, and I pushed it a hair. And I thought, that's maybe if I get lucky, I'll be in the first cut. If I'm in the first cut, I got a chance. If it's in the rough, I'm just hacking it out and hitting a wedge. And so I'm kind of walking down the fairway, looking ahead. I'm looking up to where the fairway and the first cut of rough is. I don't see a ball up there anywhere, and I don't even see a marshal anywhere either. It's like, wow, that's kind of, there's no marshal, no ball. And so I go just sprinting past the bunker, basically looking to see where this golf ball is. And the guy say, hey, the ball's behind you. It's behind you. So I turn around, and the marshal is standing on the big steep slope on the back side of the bunker. The sand kind of goes up, and then the grass goes steeply down on the other side, and my ball is halfway down the hill on the back side of the bunker. So basically I've got a lie where I'm standing like this, having to just hack the ball out of this really thick rough, to the fairway, and on top of that, the ball had gone, up the hill, and the grass is laying down the hill, so my ball was underneath it's like just this most obscene lie. I mean, it's like you look at this thing and, you don't want Billy Graham around because now you're swearing. Anyway, so I'm like, how the heck did this ball get here? And the guy goes, well, he hit the guy in the red jacket over there in the knee. And so I look, and the ropes are right along the bunker, and this guy's about maybe 15 yards further up, and sure enough, there's a big old red welt on this guy's knee, and so it hit him in the knee and went backwards, back up the slope into where the ball was. Okay. Are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. Sorry about that. Yeah, no sweat. Thanks for the lie. Laugh, laugh, laugh. So now I get over the ball, and as we all know, there's really steep downhill lies. Thick rough, you've got to get the angle to get the club down into the grass, down into the ball, and so you've got to get really steep and really vertical, and so I'm way tilted, just trying to get the angle, and then I've got to aim further and further left because that's the only way I can kind of get that kind of swing down with the angle to get the ball into the fairway. So I'm just trying to hit it literally 15 yards. And so I take, before that, as I'm taking these big practice swings, the crowd starts to back away. I forgot to mention that. Crowd on the rope right over here. I'm aiming this way. They're over here. They all start backing away. And I go, what are you backing away for? And the typical New Yorker, because you're probably going to shank it. I go, oh, I haven't shanked a ball in years. You're safe. You just, get back up on the rope there. Just move, knock it off. Just get up there. So they all move back to the ropes. And so now I get over this ball, and I just drop this thing right on top of the ball as hard as I can with the sand wedge just to hit it 20 yards. And what do? I absolutely cold shank it. All right? And I hit the same guy in the chest. So like I'm really, really proud of the fact that I was #1 in the world, along with these guys, but other guys have done that, There's very few things in golf that you can do that's probably never been done before. I think that's never been done before.
And it will never happen again either.
He'll never stand close to the ropes again.
Tom should have gone last. So many things have happened. We've all seen so many things, and the thing that comes to my mind back in 1993, and it's a line I use when I play in the pro-ams, because oftentimes, as these two men can attest, I mean, the guys get themselves worked up, and the players are all just, oh God, and I tell them, look, you're not going to hit a single shot that will impress me, okay? I don't care how good you are, but I've been playing with Bernhard and Tom and Tiger and Phil, and you're not going to hit anything that impresses me. And don't worry, you will not even come close to hitting the worst shot I've ever seen. Okay? In 1993 in the Pro-Am on the Nike Tour, the Nike Tour Championship, which I still have not figured this out, how it can be done. One of my amateurs is if I'm facing this way and hitting, my golf ball's here and I'm hitting this way, he's 85 yards from the green, 90 yards from the green, and he hits it 75 yards over his left shoulder into the woods. It was a full swing double hit. We've all hit a full swing double hit,
Oh my God.
which, I think is next to impossible in this game. I mean, we've all double hit little chips and stuff, things like that. But I mean, it was a full mighty whack that went, and it went backwards, right behind him. I mean, it was beautiful, nice high in the air, everything. 75 yards in the woods behind him.
Lots of backspin.
Bernie?
Well, one of my favorite stories is Tony Johnson from Zimbabwe, a very good player, playing with Seve Ballesteros. And they're at a links course in Scotland. They were paired together obviously all day. They're on the 14th hole now, par 4. And Seve outdrove Tony every hole by 20, 30, 40 yards. Seve was probably 6'2". Tony was like 5'7", and Seve was 50 pounds heavier or whatever. So Tony had no chance. Anyways, they tee off this par 4. It's typical links course, a little white pole. You hit it over there and hope you find the fairway. Well, Tony walks first, and he sees 2 balls. One is 25 yards up, so he knows, so I'm just going to go to the short one. And he gets to his ball, and it's playing that one is in a really deep divot, and the ball is sitting right up against the front end of the divot. And he's looking at this, and he's seeing there's a sprinkler head here, and there's a sprinkler head there. And he's, goes, Seve, have a look at this. And goes, Seve, what do you need, Tony? Just come and have a look, please. So what's up? Oh, bad lie. Sorry about that. And he goes, yeah. He goes, Seve, I'm gonna play a slice out of this lie. So I'm gonna aim about 30 yards this way. I'm gonna open the club face. So now I'm standing on the sprinkler head and I'm getting relief, right? Seve says, no, Tony, you can't hit a slice out of that lie. There's no way you can slice that ball. I can't give you a drop. And Tony goes, well, Seve, what if I play a hook? Aim 40 yards this way, and I shut the face, and I hook it around. Seve says, no, Tony, no way I can give you a drop. You're just going to have to play. And Tony looks at Seve and says, that's fine, it's your ball.
That's almost as good as your Simon Hobday story with washing the clothes.
Oh, wow. Yeah, there's a few Simon Hobday stories. I don't know if we have time.
I was told a good one when it was the tradition. It was when my dad was playing, when they played it out in Scottsdale. It was like snow or something, and the caddy called him, and and said, "Where are you?" And they said, "I'm at the hotel." He said, "Well, we're starting in 30 minutes." And so he starts racing up Scottsdale Road, and cop pulls him over and says, "Boy, I've been waiting for you all day." And Simon looked at him and said, "Well, I got here as quick as I could."
That's a true story. These guys are not only great golfers, but these are men who have, as that movie talks about the mulligan, the ultimate mulligan with God and what he's done. These three men also are men of faith. And I'm just going to give you a chance to share a little bit about your own relationship with God and how you came to be in that spot. And Tom, why don't I start with you down there, and we'll just walk this way and just talk about what God means to you.
Well, I think, everybody has a different story, and I grew up idolizing my father. My dad was my hero. He was the guy that I wanted to be like. He was the one that I wanted to please. I guess in some ways, you can kind of translate that to my same view of God. God, I wanted to please God. I wanted to make him proud of me, which meant you need to do the right thing. But it just seemed like I was always doing the wrong thing. Just always seemingly falling short, never quite being good enough. Always having a reason to say I'm sorry, and just carried a huge amount of guilt for just not being. Not ever quite measuring up. That's kind of the way I kind of lived my life as a kid, and I very clearly remember at age 15 going to an FCA meeting, Fellowship of Christian Athletes, at the football coach's house, and there was a whole bunch of guys who were in the two classes above me. I was a sophomore, so there's a junior class and senior class full of these guys who were at this FCA meeting, and at the end of this FCA meeting, they started talking about this idea of some kind of a relationship with Jesus, and how Jesus came to die on the cross for our sins. And I went to church every Sunday, so I was aware of all the stories, but they seemingly made this a way more personal thing. Like this is not just some big pie in the sky general idea out there. This is actually a real personal relationship you can have with the living God, and this is the reason why Jesus came to earth to die on the cross, is so that you could have forgiveness and of falling short. You can have a way to get around the fact that you're an imperfect person, that God can accept you as who you are, because of your faith and belief in his son Jesus Christ. And so that kind of a personal, more real faith was really new to me, and I don't know if I fully understood what it all meant at the time, but I remember that night, wanting to kind of get rid of this burden that I carried around of guilt, just of not measuring up. And so I remember praying that night that, hey, God, if you're real, I definitely want to be on your team. I want to walk with you, and I want to have a relationship with you, and I want to please you, and I want, and then more importantly, I just need your forgiveness, because I know that I'm not perfect. And so I did clearly that night feel like this burden, lift, off my shoulders, and so that was the beginning of this relationship with God that I, would call, a very personal, private thing, but, something that was life-changing, because this idea of being given a mulligan, this idea of being, giving a pass, the grace and the mercy, was a life-changing experience. I clearly felt the love of God that night, and that he cared deeply about me, and so it was the whole start of my Christian walk, But I think there's always usually a second part of the story, and that's the real part of the story. That's the important part. But I think most of us carry, a lot of stuff with us. With or without God, we carry stuff with us. And so I know as I work through my life, that I carried, always carried along this feeling of so quickly feeling guilty for not being perfect. It's a detrimental thing. I think guilt is an extremely negative and destructive emotion. I think the idea of being sorrowful for maybe what you did, and and having, feeling badly and wanting to be forgiven is one thing, but guilt is a whole different thing. It's basically saying I'm not good enough, I don't measure up, I'm not important, I'm not significant, and the forgiveness you gave me, is I'm not really buying into that. It's a whole, I think, in some ways, is just minimizing that original forgiveness of sin that God gave to us by carrying around guilt. But the fact is I did. I just kept on carrying it until there was a point in my life, probably in my 40s, which is part 2 of my story of just, get to the point where I'm miserable and just like this little, just this thought went through my head and it wouldn't go away, and it was this, is like, if I loved you so much to send my son to this earth to die on the cross to forgive you, then why can't you forgive yourself? And to me, that was a really significant moment in my life where I think that's where I truly understood the meaning of forgiveness. And I think it was exhibited to me by God. It was exhibited to me by the people around me throughout my life. And the final step was learning that I had to forgive myself too. And so I think that's really my story. And so grace and mercy and forgiveness are life-changing. And I know that it changed my life at 15, and it changed my life even more dramatically at 40.
David?
I wish I could be so eloquent about it.
You are.
I don't necessarily, I don't know if I have the words or the things to say. I grew up in the Catholic Church. We always went to church and Sunday school up until I was 9 years old. We went through a family tragedy, and we stopped going to church. And time-wise, roughly a couple years later, for one reason or another, I started riding my bike, what was not very far, half a mile up the street to the Episcopalian church, and going to a Bible, like Sunday school, as an 11-year-old, 12-year-old. And I don't know, that continued to progress and things of that nature, and then some of my walk and some of my faith, it became a part of decisions I was making, especially when I started to look at school to go to college and play college golf, and ultimately for one reason or another, and listening to Tom just now, I've not really thought of it until just this moment, but I made a decision to go. I was recruited and could have chosen any school. I could have gone where I wanted, and chose Georgia Tech, which was at the time was a good golf school, but it wasn't Oklahoma State, Arizona State, things like that. But they were really good. But the man who was the coach there, for some reason, I felt like that's where I needed to be. And his wife, his name's Puggy Blackman, and his wife Gail, have had a huge part of my life, and they're still a part of mine and Susie's life. We're still in touch and still in contact. Very strong, faithful people, and always have been. And in my professional career, with my bravado and success and confidence and such, one of the things that Puggy told me, and Susie and I have talked about it a lot. He kept at me like, "Don't worry, you're going to be humbled. Don't worry, you can be like that, but you're going to be humbled." And so it's more of a evolution, I think, for me. And then the blessing I had in my life to cross paths with my dear wife, we met in a brief 30-minute window that really should not have happened. If you hear the story, and I'm not going to bore you with the whole story, but it was like a 30-minute window, and her faith and her belief in Christ and God only kept strengthening mine. And I don't have any awakening moment. I don't have a point at which, but it's always been in me somewhere. And Larry knows all too well, with all the talks and questions I've asked him for what is now 25 years, that I've had my arguments and I've had my struggles with God. And I think that one thing that Tom just said just really hit me too, and this is something my wife has told me on numerous occasions: the fear and the guilt, you've got to let go. It's been taken from you, and I think that's one of the things I still struggle with. But I do sit here, and I do on many nights during the week just pray that for the and say thank you basically for coming and living a sinless life and dying on the cross and rising and taking it from us. And I wish there was I could give you a specific moment, but there's not. It's just been an evolution of, I'm now 50, of 50 years, and I sit here admiring the man to my left, two men to my left and the man to my right, and they've always been heroes of mine. And I just feel like I've been blessed in my marriage. I've been blessed to have the wife I have, and I thank God for her every day. And I don't understand why he's done the things he's done and the path he's put us on, but it's not for me to question. It's for me to believe in.
Well, I grew up, as I told you, in Germany, Bavaria, in a Catholic home. I went to church every single day before school, and became altar boy for about 7 years. And during that time, what I remember learning mostly in church was that you had to be a good person, that you have to try and keep the 10 Commandments and earn your way to heaven. That's what I remember from those teenage years and those years that I went to church. And I believed in God actually pretty much all my life, but I didn't have a personal relationship with him. I didn't know I could have forgiveness of sins right here, right now. I thought I had to earn my way to heaven by being better than most. And so fast forward, I'm winning my first Masters in 1985. And it was actually in Butler Cabin. I was asked, Bernhard, did you watch Butler Cabin? Is where you get the green jacket prize presentation on TV. So hundreds of millions of people around the world are probably watching. And I think it was Jim Nantz' first question was, were you watching the leaderboard today at all? I said, it's really, I learned the last few months that watching the leaderboard is not really good for me, because if I see myself at the top of the leaderboard and I try and defend my place and play more cautiously, and if you do that, you're not going to win. And if I don't see my name on the leaderboard at all and I'm 14 shots behind or something, or 12, I get down on myself because I'm playing so bad. So it doesn't do me any good watching leaderboards. But I said, one time today I took a quick glance, and I was, as you come off the 9th green at Augusta, you walk about 50 yards to the 10th tee. And I looked to my right, and there's this huge leaderboard. I mean, it's hard not to see on 18 green. And I literally said on live TV, Jesus Christ, I couldn't believe I'm 4 shots behind Curtis Strange. I started off 2 shots behind, and I thought I played a good front 9. I thought I'm a little closer, and I'm actually falling 2 further back. So I'm saying this in Butler Cabin on live TV, and people are watching everywhere, not knowing what I'm doing. I heard Jesus Christ here and there all the time on the golf course. You hear it left and right. It's the most common name ever found in any language. So, and remember this story. We'll come back to this. And I think Larry Moody and Scott Simpson were watching me say this on TV. There, Scott Simpson was playing. Larry was staying with him at the house. They were watching the final hole, whatever, the final of it. And as they heard me say this, Larry told me later, I didn't even know him, he said, we prayed a prayer, something like, God, wouldn't it be great if this guy would ever become a follower of Jesus Christ, a believer? And fast forward, when I finally won my first major, I came close several times at the British Open, but I didn't win it. And so I should have been over the moon. I was literally ranked number 1 in the world. I had won lots of money. I was leading the money list in Europe and in America at that point in time. I had money in the bank. I had fame. I had just married a beautiful young girl, and had everything the world could possibly give me and more. And I'm 26 years old. But I had an emptiness inside of me, and I couldn't pinpoint what it was. And I'm going to bed that night, and I have no idea what this emptiness is about, and I wake up with it, and it's still with me. And it keeps with me for the days ahead. So I'm driving to Hilton Head, and Bobby Clampett was a close friend of mine, and we had arranged for a practice round at the tournament there, the Heritage Classic. So we played on Tuesday, and at the end of the practice round, he says, Bernie, wouldn't you want to come to a Bible study tomorrow night with me? I'm going, Bobby, Bible study? What exactly are you guys doing? And I'd never been to a Bible study. And he goes, well, we have Larry Moody is our chaplain on tour. Every Wednesday night we meet for an hour to have Bible study. And he either talks about a topic or he opens the Bible and explains a certain passage and how that relates to us nowadays, 2,000 years later after Jesus' death. I go, well, this sounds kind of interesting, but not sure I'm going to come. So I didn't commit. I said, let me talk to my wife, Vicky, and I'll get back to you. Well, she accepted the invitation. We both went that next night. And here's Larry Moody. He just prayed for me 3 days ago, 2.5 days ago. And here I'm walking into the room. And the message on that Wednesday night was what it means to be born again. And he was teaching about the passage in the book of John 3:3. Nicodemus, a spiritual Jewish leader, came to Jesus at night, and Jesus told Nicodemus at John 3:3, you have to be born again by the Spirit to enter the kingdom of God. And in John 3:5, Jesus told Nicodemus, you have to be born of, or you have to be born again, and then he says you have to be born of water and the Spirit to enter into the kingdom of God, which means heaven. And I'm sitting there going, wow, what is he preaching about? I've never heard, I've been going to church all my life, never heard this born again stuff. And so he went on about explaining what it means to be born again. He says everybody's born, everyone that lives has been born once in flesh from the womb of our mothers. But not everybody's going to be born a second time, a spiritual birth. It's a spiritual rebirth. And he explained what it means. It means we're all born in a sin nature. Adam and Eve took the forbidden fruit in the Garden of Eden. Sin entered life, entered the world, and from that point on, we were all born with sin. And I knew I was a sinner. I already told you I was trying to live a good life, but I knew I wasn't perfect. Well, heaven is a place of perfection. There's no room for sin in heaven. And God knew that, so he sent his son Jesus to die on the cross, to be raised 3 days later, and he was the perfect sacrifice for our sins, past, present, and future sins. So Larry explained this very eloquently, and at the end of the hour, I basically waited till everybody was gone, and I shuffled my way over to Larry and said, what kind of Bible are you using? Because the Catholic Church Bible didn't have that born again in there, I think. Or they didn't talk about it, I don't know. Anyways, he says, here, it's NIV, New International Version. But you know what? You should buy your own Bible and read it and study it. And if you have questions, feel free to call me. Here's my number. And I'll be happy to help you in this process. And I'm going, that's interesting, because I hadn't heard this born again thing, but so I bought a Bible, my wife too, and we started reading. We went back to the Bible studies every time I played on the U.S. tour. And it was a process of about 2 or 3 months, and it became very, very clear to me and to my wife, Vicky, that we had to be born again. We had to accept what God offers, that we're born in the sin nature, that we cannot earn our way. I had to trust and believe that it's not what I'm doing for God that gets me there, it's what God did for me already, but I had to accept it. It's like me giving you a key for a brand new Mercedes. If you don't put that key in the ignition and start the car and drive it, what good is it? It's useless. So we went back and we were both convinced that we had to give our life to Jesus Christ. So I went on my knees one day and prayed the prayer to accept Jesus, to ask for his forgiveness. And from that very moment, that emptiness had left. And this was now 37 years ago, and it hasn't returned. It's by far the best decisions I've ever made in my life. I made a lot of good decisions. I made some bad ones, but a lot of good ones. But this is by far the most important and the best one. And I'm going to tell you a quick story again. 1993, I win the Masters again. I go to Butler Cabin again, right? First question was, well, Bernhard, which one was more important, your first Masters or the second? And I said, you know, they're both very important because one was the first major big breakthrough, but this one is more meaningful because today is Easter Sunday and we celebrate the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And he couldn't get to the next question fast enough, quick enough to change the subject. But in a moment, I'm gonna invite everybody in the room to make my prayer your prayer. They can be your words. And with as many people in the room as there is, there's several of you, if not many, that probably haven't been born again, that haven't made that decision, that haven't prayed that prayer to accept Jesus and to have forgiveness of sin and have eternal life in heaven and not separated from God in hell or wherever it may be. So this is not a decision to join a club, or it doesn't cost anything. It's far more important. It's actually more important than life and death, because it determines where you spend eternity. Think about how long eternity is. You know, we're so worried about the now and those 60, 70, 80, 100 years that we might live on this earth. We're so concerned and consumed, and we rush around and you know, cell phone and TV and all the gadgets we have and all the things that pull on our time. We should be more concerned of eternal things. Anyways, I'm going to say this prayer in a second, and I would like to encourage any and all of you that haven't made that decision, that if you are not sure, if I would ask you right now, if you would die tonight in bed or whatever, are you going to heaven? Are you sure you're saved and you're going to be spending eternity in heaven? If you cannot answer that with a yes, I would encourage you to say that prayer with me. Because in Romans 10:9, I think it says, if you confess with your mouth and believe it in your heart that Jesus Christ died on the cross and was raised again, you will be saved. Now, if God says you will be saved, it doesn't mean there's a good chance. It could be, it might be. No, he doesn't lie. He can't lie. That means you will be saved. This is a guarantee. He promises it to us. Anyways, I'm going to bow my head. I'm going to close us in a word of prayer. If you feel led to say, make my words your words and say this prayer with me, please do. You will never regret it. Here we go. Heavenly Father, I come before you. I confess that I'm a sinner. I recognize that I have made mistakes, and I'm grateful that you have sent your Son, Jesus Christ, to die on the cross for my sins, past, present, and future, no matter how bad those were. And Lord, I pray that you would become Lord of my life, you be my friend and my Savior, and that you would make me into the person that you want me to be. And I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you. The other good news is I hope to see you all in heaven, and I'm going to give free golf lessons in heaven. If any of you need help, I'll see you there.
Listen, we're not quite done. I know Derek wants to come and make an announcement, but my dear friend Ken Blanchard made a story he shared with me today. His mentor was Peter Drucker. And Ken asked him, and I've never heard this story till Ken told me tonight. He asked him why he had become a Christian. And Peter said very clearly to him, he says it was a simple proposition. He says, if it's justice you're looking for, whatever you did wrong, you got to pay for. And if you're going to look for mercy, all it is a lowering of the sentence. But he says where there's grace, someone else takes the hit. He said, I wanted that grace. He said, because Jesus Christ paid a debt he did not owe, because you and I owed a debt we could not pay. And that's the freedom and the joy that Jesus Christ offers. So thank you, Ken, for sharing that with me today and Peter's statement. Derek, where are you?
All right, you know what? A lot of you guys were invited here, that people that love you, and that's why you're here tonight. If you got any questions, what Bernhard was talking about, talk to them. Feel free to talk. That's what we do at Links Players. We can have an open discussion, and really, the whole idea for all of us is that we do believe. And it's what we studied the other day was that it takes a seed, a mustard seed. That's all it takes. It's the smallest seed, and yet it grows to what? One of the biggest plants. So if just that little seed, that's all it takes tonight. And so I want to thank you, Bernhard, for leading many of you that maybe never made that profession of faith. And if you got questions, like I said, you got people that invited you here tonight that love you, and so does Jesus. And now there's these books called The Mulligan. And we all need mulligans, right? How many of you on the golf course have needed a mulligan? Hey! But really, as Bernhard was saying, the ultimate mulligan of second chances is Jesus Christ. So again, we have books here. We don't have a lot for everybody, so here's what I'm doing. We have registration cards. Those of you who have accepted Jesus tonight, you guys get the first choice of books. So my son Ryan is up here, and he's helped us put this together. Thanks for my wife for understanding, obviously, what we have to do to put this. Thank you, Larry. Kevin, again, thanks again for, providing this great venue here. And obviously, Devin, without you, Kevin wouldn't be here. So, you know, that. But thank you very much. Hey, drive safe tonight. And again, valet parking, it may take a while, but again, take care of those guys that take care of your cars out there. God bless you. We'll see you again next year. No, they're in the back room. Ryan's over here on the table. There's a form you can fill out, and we'll good care of you. Come on up and say hi to these guys. They got to get going because they got to play tomorrow. Please give them a route. You see them on the golf course if you're there at the tournament. Thank you.